On the 8th of June 1913, King George V visited Southport to open the King's Gardens. My grandfather, William Crompton Bolton, had the honour to be presented to His Majesty as a veteran of the Crimean War and was photographed shaking hands with the King. I have the photograph here.
I've got very happy memories of King's Gardens, the Venetian nights and the Venetian lights and the beautiful bridge. We came down as children to see those evenings. They had gondolas and rowing boats, but they were decorated with lights. It was magical to a child to see all this. So it is a very fond memory of mine and a very clear memory as well.
I was born in 1942. My grandfather's brother, Robert Rimmer, I believe was the builder of the bridge going over the Marine Lake. Robert Rimmer were builders. The premises were down up Orton Road. And also they did an extension to the Floral Hall building, some years ago. I never knew this till some time later. I mean, it's just one of those things, it's just been passed down really, yeah.
My memories go back to the early 1940s. I lived in Burscough at the time. Holidays for the summer were coming to Southport perhaps 3 times a year. And we would come on the steam train with mother, 2 sisters, and we would picnic between the lake and the miniature railway. And we'd sit there and have great fun, even hiring bikes from under the pier. And then we would go and play on the Peter Pan's playground and do all the other things that children do along the lake, and it was absolutely marvellous. Hearing that train hooter go along at 6 years old and rushing to the railings to watch it go past, Yeah. But really it was the picnic. I can remember tomato sandwiches, and all the fun we had tearing around on bikes under the pier.
The year was 1943. I had travelled from Bradford to meet my boyfriend Ted. We were both in the army. He was a corporal in the RAMC and I was a sergeant, a fact I often reminded him of. It was St Patrick's Day and a beautiful evening for a walk around the lake. After a while we went to sit on a bench overlooking the lake. We kept an eye on the town hall clock. It was nearly 9 o'clock and out of the blue, Ted asked me to marry him. He said his life started from that day. A couple of days later, Ted returned to the army to prepare for the D-Day landings. That was 70 years ago, and we had a lifetime together of happiness. If you are sat on our bench now and you have only half as many happy years, you will be very lucky.
My earliest memory of the King's Gardens is from the late 1940s, when I recall being taken to the beach by my parents on sunny summer days. We would walk up Skagebrick Avenue from Lord Street, and then we would cross the promenade to the King's Gardens, passing the memorial to the great lifeboat disaster of 1886. My grandfather, who was still alive then, would have been 16 at the time of the disaster, and it was still within the living memory in those days. We would then walk through the gardens and over the Venetian Bridge, although I don't recall that we called it the Venetian Bridge in those days. It may have been called the Floral Bridge, but I'm not sure. I loved looking down at the water below through the wooden planks and running up and down the hump in the middle. On the other side of the bridge, before reaching the beach, was the great sea-bathing lake. Back in the gardens, one of my most enduring memories is of the lawns adjacent to the promenade, where hundreds of courting couples would lie together on summer days. This would be about 1950. They would have come on the many train excursions from the towns of Lancashire. I know there was a serious housing shortage after the war, and this would be one of the few ways they had of getting away from their families for a few hours.
It's about 1949-50. Many years ago, as you know, there used to be club outings, and we'd come over to the coast on day trips with the whole family. And I don't even recollect actually coming to Southport, believe it or not. So I were only about 4, 5 or 6 there. But when I joined the police back in 1963, I transferred over here in 66, and a colleague who I worked with, I happened to show him the photograph. Straight away he says, "Oh, that's Venetian Bridge at King's Gardens." I said, "How do you know that?" He says, "Through the Wayne scales on it." And these were quite famous for the bridge, these little Wayne scales. If you're out for a day, if you wanted to weigh yourself, like the big red ones now, these were obviously provided by the old borough.
Sunday was a very special day for me, as my father, George Royal Rimmer, used to take me to pitch and putt in King's Gardens, Southport. When I was about 6 years of age, 1949, sadly my father passed away when I was 8 years of age. Those days seem like yesterday to me.
As an only child in the early 50s, I was very lonely during the long summer holidays when my hard-working mother gave me a box of sandwiches and a bottle of ginger beer and left me to find my own entertainment. I soon discovered the islands at the sides of the Venetian Bridge. Every day, rain or shine, I would make myself a hiding place on the islands and reenacted all my most recent books, including my very favourite Enid Blyton's. I was at my happiest during those times on the islands. I never felt lonely and felt that I owned my favourite one. I still love to see them, especially as now they look so smart. The lake, the islands and the bridge were my seaside home and made a lonely little girl happy and content.
In 1958, I had just finished in the sixth form and was looking for a job for the summer holiday. The Lakeside Miniature Railway was looking for someone to tout for business outside their railway station near Pleasureland. I immediately cycled over there, but the manager, who I think was called Mr. Bates, said he was sorry, but the job had just been taken. But from next week, he would be needing another train driver. When I returned the following week, he was as good as his word and took me on. It had to be one of the most fun jobs I would ever have. In those days, there were still 2 steam locomotives operating on the Lakeside Miniature Railway, which had originally been built for the Festival of Britain, but I was given a diesel engine called the Duke of Edinburgh. When I was driving the train, people were forever taking photos of me sitting in the engine, you know. So whenever I see any old pictures from the 1950s, and I haven't got any myself, you know, I always look to see whether it's B, but it never is.
And tell me about the Magic Bridge. When I was a child, I used to love to go over the bridge. I used to drive Mum and Dad mad because it was a planked bridge then and you could see through each and every plank. And I stopped at each and every plank to look at the water through the gap. Their eyes would go up and I'd be called repeatedly. It was worse on the way home because on the way over the Magic Bridge, as I called it, I was a little bit quicker because we would be on our way to either a little train ride on the miniature railway or maybe going to the zoo or the fairgrounds. Coming back was a different story because, you know, I'd had all the enjoyment, so it didn't matter if it took all day to get home.
The main memory is playing tennis in the gardens. They had 2 tennis courts here, run by the hotel for their visitors. All big hotels had tennis courts, and in the summer I used to rent one of the courts on a Wednesday night for our tennis club. So it always seemed to be fine in the olden days. I don't remember us ever cancelling an evening when we were playing tennis.
Yeah, we're the Southport Cycling Club who have organised cycle races on the King's Gardens for 20 years, beginning in 1965. As the races grew over the years, they came into international races and we had competitors coming from Holland and Belgium and Germany and France. It was an all-day event, rain or shine, of course.
And during those years, we had some really excellent riders. We had the winner of the Tour de France when it came to England. We had the Dutch national team over that rode the milk race in the early 60s. It started on the bridge, on the roadside, up to the pier, round in front of the pier, back down alongside the lake, twisting round. It was all twists, back round the pumping station and back down the main road to finish. It was 64 laps, which is 40 miles.
I've just got a memory about the lake from 1966. The lake was always the big attraction for me growing up in Southport. I loved watching the turbojet Suzanne and the other motorboats. I remember being thrilled one Saturday when I was finally allowed to get behind the wheel with my little brother Adrian. Unfortunately, I didn't look quite as cool as I'd hoped, as Mum insisted we both wore our school blazers.
Dad said he was a painter and decorator, and one of the places he told me about was Your Magic Bridge, so I was quite surprised at that. He used to say it was so different then. In February, March every year, they would prepare the woodwork and then put a preparation coat on it and then whatever colour that was going on the top, and it would be all ready for what we had then was a holiday season. I used to think, oh, that must have been marvellous. So I said, was it really good? And he said, no, quite boring actually. When you think of all the balustrades, I suppose it must be.
The summer of 1966 was very good. England had won the World Cup. The Beatles had taken the world by storm. London was swinging, and my elder brother had gone to live down in London. When my brother turned up for a weekend away, we were surprised to see him wearing high-heel shoes, hipster trousers, and a big floral shirt and a high-neck coat. Where else to go but Southport, the most fashionable resort in the north? So Saturday night, all the lads dressed up in their best suits, and off we went to Southport. Not being much of a drinker myself, I was soon out of the game and left in the car. The lads went to one or two more pubs and then decided to go through King's Gardens. And there they came upon a row of rowing boats turned upside down. So they undid the boats and went for a midnight row. Round about 1 a.m, they returned to the car and we drove home. We got home, they opened the kitchen door and switched on the lights, and that's when I saw the bright green paint stripes down the cheeks of their backsides, across the backs of their best suits and along the calves. My brother looked absolutely brilliant. The boats had actually been painted and they were turned upside down so they could dry out. Everybody's suits were ruined, but my brother, nothing daunted, the next day walked into the pub and told people this was the psychedelic look that was all the rage in London.
I've lived in Southport all my life and enjoyed the beauty of Southport forever. The architects have really done a good job. And you can see the lake, which you couldn't do before. You saw the gardens in front of the lake and the promenade, but people couldn't enjoy the beauty.
To see it open up, it's beautiful. So it's bringing back the good memories.
Real fond memories of Southport, and now so pleased to see that things are coming back as they were.